Positive news today. A couple of companies listing on the JSE. We have Clover and Platfields, and some news out of the JSE yesterday. 14 new listings over the course of this year. So it looks like we are starting to pick up a bit of listings momentum in this market.
Yes, I think it's been a tough year or two before this, and I think slowly now the people are starting to get funding again. People will take on a little bit of risk. So companies coming back onto the board, it's a good way to get funding, and so far they've been relatively good. Clover up about 2.5% today on from the pre-listing numbers were, so looking relatively solid. And we've had one or two nice listings as well. We saw Royal Buffer King Platinum come on a month ago as well. So looking quite positive going forward.
Really expanding the investment universe for investors, so you're getting a bit more choice in that agricultural sector with Clover, and of course an early development stage company with Platfield if you want to go in at the bottom end of the platinum market.
Yes, I think the exploration miners are going to battle to get a bit of funding, and I think that's why they have to come to the board. And I think that you're still looking on the platinum side, really at the main players, Amplats, Implats, and maybe some Lonmans. And I think it would be a really big ask for foreigners to come in and buy some of those exploration mines at the moment. But at least it does give you that added risk appetite if you're looking for it.
Well, looking at some of the news we've had out today, we had the government coming out with its 2010 ARV tender awards. Adcock, Ingram and Aspen both publishing what they've received from those tenders. Adcock Ingram's shares down though, so it looks like the market's disappointed that perhaps it didn't get more from that tender. And it did say it got about 4% of the total tender amount.
Yes, I mean the tender was 4.2 billion, so I think it's about 168 million's worth of ARVs that Adcock will get. They're actually down 13% since a week ago. Adcock coming under pressure last week as well because of had to suspend some drugs, Synap 40 being one of them. So they've been under pressure, and obviously 4% is not a big enough part of that tender. 168 million, it does help them with losing some of the drugs that they've had to take off the market. But I think people are expecting more like 10%, and then Aspen getting 40% of that tender. So very good for Aspen, and I see Aspen's price moving forward today.
Of course, those Adcock Ingram shares down by close to 7% at this stage. So as you said, adding to that negativity around Adcock Ingram. Aspen, while Adcock Ingram has withdrawn those 3 drugs that contain DPP, which is announced on Friday, Aspen hasn't come out with any similar announcement. Do any of its drugs also contain that component?
I'm sure they do have drugs with those components. They haven't said anything. Cipla MedPro, another generic supplier of medicines, hasn't said anything about it either. So I think that at some point they're going to have to say how many drugs they've got with that ingredient in it, and they will have to pull that. Adcock can't be the only one, so I think they're just taking the pain first, and maybe there won't be such a sharp drop with the others as they pull theirs. But I think obviously they have to go through a list, see what products they've got with those, and they will have to withdraw them.
Well, Adcock Ingram coming out with some negative news over the past few days. We've had Anglo American coming out with some positive news over the past few days. I think last week it's announced that it had got the license from the Brazilian government to proceed with that Minas Rio project in Brazil. And then news today just on iron ore capacity, which could continue to rise.
Yes, I say they're expecting Kumba's iron ore to double by 2013, and they expect 150 million tons of iron ore by 2020. So it just shows you how good their assets are in Anglo American, and looking very positive for them. I think that they've also cleaned up a lot of their assets. They've set in tarmac in France, so they've cleaned up their assets, and they're really focusing on what they do best, and that's coal, platinum and iron ore. So very positive for Anglo American. And going forward, if the world does recover, they're looking very good to get that growth, and you can see a share price of around 400 Rand if everything moves correctly.
Of course, it's all very well doubling your iron ore capacity as long as there is demand for that. What's the picture looking like going forward into next year? Because we've had some numbers out of China over the past couple of days. Looks like things going pretty strongly still in China.
China's still going very strong. I think people are worried whether the recovery is going to be good enough, and they're still worrying about all of the sovereign debts in Europe. And can America really pull itself out of this recession that it's gone through? We'll see some numbers coming out of the States. Chain store sales are going to be coming out, retail sales, and as well as their PPI. And then the FOCM meeting later tonight. So those are all numbers that we'll be looking at closely to see if that American economy is getting going. If that American economy does get going, I think that it will buoy the world market. I think Anglo will be sitting in a very good position to get that growth from that iron ore.
What's expected out of that FOMC meeting tonight? Because at the last one, they announced the 600 billion asset purchase program. Since then, we've also had news that tax cuts could be extended if Congress approves that. Do you think there's going to be anything announced at tonight's FOMC meeting?
I don't think that there'll be any surprises in the meeting. They might say that if it's needed, they will put some more stimulus into the market, but I think the market is responding over the last week or two quite well to the QE2 stimulus that was put into the market. I don't think there'll be any surprises in this meeting.
Retail sales out of the US this afternoon, also producer prices and chain store sales as well. So quite a lot for the market to digest going into the afternoon.
Yes, there is a lot of numbers, and I think you can see it in our market. We're relatively flat today and waiting for those numbers to come out. We've also got futures closeout that's happening tomorrow, so there is a little bit of jitteriness around the market, and they're waiting for those numbers to see what positions they're going to take over the next day or two.
What are we expecting from that futures closeout? How many contracts still out there?
Currently there are about 80,000 contracts still open. Of that 80,000, probably about 35 to 40,000 have to be rolled. That's not a huge closeout, but there will be some movement of positions around in the next day, tomorrow during closeout. And obviously the guys will take their direction from which way they're going to go from the numbers coming through from the States, and also that the FSOC meeting this evening. So I think a lot of the last bit of closeout will happen tomorrow during the 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock.
Then we have that holiday on Thursday, so I should imagine from Friday the markets are going to get pretty quiet here in South Africa, Rob.
Yes, it is very possible that it is good volume during closeout, that some of the asset managers will try close off some of their positions and clean up their books so they've got a good yearly close. There has been a very good run-up in the markets, and some positions will be closed over the Christmas holidays.